please, no problem at all.
Okay, hi everyone. Today we have the pleasure of talking with someone who works every day with language, yeah. Not just English, but also Japanese language. Not just reading or writing, but actually speaking it in real time to help people from different cultures, different country, different language to understand each other. So welcome, Hangju. We're so excited to hear your story and learn from your experience as an interpreter. Okay, would you like to say something to the audience, please?
Hello, good evening. Really nice to be here. Actually, the pleasure is mine, Ibu Meta. Well, thank you very much for inviting me. And hopefully, what we are going to discuss today, simply sharing my story can be what would we call that? Can be useful or can be a lesson learned, for anyone who listen to our talk tonight.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I hope to like that. Okay, let's start, yeah. Okay,
Okay.
to begin with, I'm so curious, when did you first fall in love with the English language? Like, wow,
Well,
was it a book or movie or something else that made you feel like, wow, I want to learn this language like that?
I think that's funny actually. You asked me that kind of questions because it just reminds me of my first interaction with English a long, long time ago. Actually, it was when I was in elementary school. So back then, in my age, I we didn't learn English actually in elementary school. So when we came to junior high school, that was actually the first time for us in our generation at the time to get to know English. But before coming to junior high school, I had a friend actually, and she was my senior. She was, I guess, 1 or 2 years older than I was. And of course, she went to junior high school earlier than I did. And I knew, when the first time she was in junior high school, she told me that, I learned something new, which was English. And I was curious. And I had a dictionary. I guess, my uncle has had a dictionary at times. Then I look up the dictionary and try to see, the different word because I talk in Sudanese, right? Back then. And this is something different. That was what I thought at the time. So I learned to memorize, some word. And from that times, even though I didn't learn English in a formal way, but I simply felt in love with English simply by looking up the dictionary. So I guess, that was my first interaction with English, and it was effectively making me falling in love with English. Yeah.
Yeah, so we didn't learn English in the formal situation or like formal school only, right? You can learn from the book also, the movie, or like you can take a look
Mm.
to the dictionary to find out the meaning of the words in English, right? So a lot of
Yeah.
way yeah, to learn about language.
Yes. Sure. Of course.
So now, a lot of people who love English are not becoming teachers or translator or interpreter, right? So
Mhm.
what made you choose interpreting instead?
I used to teach English actually, but not in a formal school. I had a long enough experience actually teaching in the English institutions. So I guess
Oh,
more than 5 years. Yeah. And I love that. And I also had some private classes. And I love teaching very much actually. I love that very much. But then at one point I just thought that I needed a new challenge. And also, to tell you frankly, I also needed what is it like the improvement in my income, financial income. I was grateful that I had sufficient income from teaching, but there is something else that the English could offer us actually. So I knew actually, that what at the times, when I was teaching, but I didn't have any braveness to start becoming an interpreter. And long story short, I had an opportunity, first thing first, to be a Japanese interpreter actually, but lately another chance of becoming an English interpreter also came to me. So I simply grabbed it. I wanted, from the beginning, and there was a chance. And Alhamdulillah, so I could make use of that chance, and here I am now as an interpreter.
That's a really great story. So, but I think many people do not really know, yeah, what's the
Mhm.
difference about the interpreters and translators, or but I want to know in depth about interpreters. So, what interpreters do every day? Could you could you walk us through a typical day in your life? What kind of settings do you work in, like online, in person, for
Mm.
events, or what else like that?
Okay then. Well, let's start by telling you, the
Mhm.
audience, telling you the difference between interpreters and translator, because sometimes it mix actually, right?
Yes.
So referring to, I am actually joining Himpunan Penerjemah Indonesia, and they translate, or they decide or determine the terminology. So if we heard, for example, we heard translator, so in bahasa Indonesia it is translated as a penerjemah tulisan or penerjemah saja. But interpreter is actually different things. It has a different set of skills actually to do each job. An interpreter is translated as a juru bahasa, okay, or penerjemah lisan. So the difference is actually between lisan and tulisan. So whether it is spoken or it is written. So translations is actually written translations, but interpretations is for spoken translation, things like that. And I sometimes do some translations, but this is not my main job. I prefer doing as a interpreter, because it is actually more likely suitable with my patients. I love talking, and I think I need to challenge that kind of capacity, or not really capacity, that kind of talent, right, or patient. So I choose to be an interpreter. Okay, so that was actually the difference between the two. And then you said to me, the next question would be, sorry, could you like to repeat that?
Okay, like before I ask you, what do you do every day as an interpreter? Like, what kind of setting of your works? Yeah, like in online or in person
Oh,
or from events or what?
now most of my job are actually off-site or on-site, sorry, on-site,
Um,
meaning that, I have to, or doing offline. Meaning that, for example, yesterday I was in Chililin area, the borderline between Chililin and Cianjur. So there was a project of hydropower, actually. And one international institutions needed me to support with their project. So I went there. What I did was actually accompanied one expert, one consultant actually, health safety consultant from that institutions, to check the progress or to check the conditions of the project in that area. So he was from Australia, and he would like to hear or to listen to everything that was going on the field. And my job is actually, to bridge the communication. So when the local says something in Bahasa Indonesia, then I have to interpret that, or I have to convey, the message spokenly or orally to my client, that, consultant from Australia, in English. And the other way around, when that client or that consultant wanted to give some informations, wanted to give some comment, or even giving, because he was consultant actually, right? So when he wanted to um giving, some guidance or instructions, of course, in English because he couldn't speak Indonesian at all. So my functions at the times was actually to convey his message in English into bahasa Indonesia to the local people. Well, basically, that is very much of, doing my job as an interpreter.
I think it's gotta be hard, right? As an interpreter, because you need to translate to other name like interpret, yeah, the meaning of the English to English or Indonesian to English to the audience directly, right? Without without take dictionary, without something that can maybe help you to translate it, right?
Mhm.
So not only that, I think the let's say it is a live interpreter or live interpretation, yeah. So it will be can be intense, right? So like how do you stay calm and focused when you are interpreting in real time? Like do you have any mental tricks like that?
Live interpretations meaning, maybe what you mean is simultaneous interpretations, I guess, right?
Yes.
So, using some devices, something like that. Um, well, well, I would say that preparations is everything actually, right? Sometimes we do not really have much time to prepare, but at least when we get an offer to work for a certain project to support our client, then I will have to ask um, the at least the topics of the talk or the topic of the discussions to know possible terminologies that will come up during that conversations or that talk or that discussions. And now, thanks to AI actually, right? We can simply give, some captions to have lists of word or list of terminologies related to the topic that we are going to support. And it helps actually, at least, we know some terminologies. And then we can also discuss or we can also consult with the client regarding the context of the interpretations. And by having that in our mind, so at least, we are not in zero conditions or zero situations before coming to the workplace, actually, right? So at least, we know something about, the things that they are going to talk. And then after that, of course, we have to be as relaxed as possible. Try to interact with the client if it is possible to know how, the way he or she speaks, what accents that they use, right? Because, even though they are talking in English, but English can be different, right? From one area to the other area. So we have to get to know how Australians say English, in their accents. How Indian, for example, when they speak in English, yeah, we also have to know their accents because, sometimes it is also challenging to catch the words, that they say if we are not familiar with that. But after getting familiar, the things is getting easier and easier, so we can enjoy our jobs even better. So when we get used to it, I guess that would be the thing.
Thank you so much. That's so inspiring by the way. Okay, so now let's talk about English for kids, yeah. Can you
Mm.
because I teach young learners. It's
Oh, okay.
yeah, which means SD ya in Bahasa or elementary school. So
Mm.
some kids or some students will feel like frustrated, yeah, or even scared about learning English. Like it is too hard for me. It's not my language, like that.
Mm. Mm.
That those things are always uh, finding on me, when I teach English like that. Like they will say like, "Miss, it's okay if I can't because that is not my language," like that. So sometimes, yeah, it makes me frustrated, right? When I teach English, especially like that. So what would you to say to a child, yeah, or a students who feels like English is too hard? How can they stay motivated and not give up to learn English?
I don't know. When I was teaching in the language institutions, well, lucky me, I didn't have much experience dealing with early age students actually, right? So I used to teach adult, and that was, in my opinion, easier actually, right? People, sorry, because when they came to our institutions, they had already had motivations, at least, right? To learn. So I didn't have any problems in motivating them because they came with their own motivation. For example, they want to pass some exams, or they want to be more fluent in the English conversation, things like that. I had an experience teaching kids actually, and I come to a conclusion that teaching kids is actually not my thing. So because of that, when I heard you, Ibu Meta, you are teaching English to children, I really salute you because, in my opinion, it is not an easy thing, for us to do, especially in Indonesia, right?
Yes, okay.
When the English is not our native language, not even, our second language. English is actually foreign language for us in Indonesia. But this is only my opinion. I guess, we can motivate early age children to learn English simply by exposing them a lot with a, I guess, with a movie or something, like animations,
Mhm.
because, children will love that, right?
Yes.
And just simply expose them, to that kind of things, and they will love, the story. They will love the animations, and then indirectly, I guess, they are going to be exposed to English itself, right? And from having watch that movie, we can discuss, the lesson, or, we can also remind them of the words or terminology that we could find in that movie. That would be, one of the things that we can do. At least, we expose them to English as much as possible, and do not expect that 100% of your students in your class will love English.
Mm.
But there will be some of them who are motivated to learn more about that. And you don't have to forget now our kids is has a privilege actually, right? Our children have a privilege living in they are actually native, what is it? We call that, technology native, or internet native, because, they were born and they are now living in this era actually, right? So watching, something in the internet is actually something quite normal now. So all we have to do just guide them, to get exposed with the right materials, I guess. I think, that would be one of the things. So there is another one, that I can think of actually, but maybe let's just go back to your question first.
So I think this is the last questions, and I think it's really, really good question. Everyone wants to know it. Yeah, like a lot of people think interpreting is just about knowing the language. It just
Ah,
about yeah, interpret it, right? Like
mm,
you can speak English, you can speak English, so you just mix that. You just translate each other like that. But I'm sure that it's not only that, right? It's more than that, right? So what other skills should someone develop if they dream of becoming an interpreter?
yeah. Yeah, yeah, you're right actually. Everyone can learn English. Everyone eventually can speak English actually, right? But those who can speak English, um, those who can speak English, will need, something else when they want to be an interpreter. So language capability is actually one of the requirement, of course, right? Because we have to translate from one language to the others, from the source language to the target language. So if you want to be an English interpreter, then it means that you have to master two different languages, right? The English and also Indonesians. But that is actually one thing. And the other things that we can think of are actually, for example, communication skill. So communication skill is not only related to, or it is not only about the language, right? So if we learn about communications, then there are a lot of factors that we need to learn or we need to improve to make our communications better. Knowing who we are talking to, for example, that is actually part of communications. And then adjusting the language that we are going to use to fit with the audience that we are facing is actually one of the other factors of communications. And we are also talking about verbal and non-verbal communication. Sometimes, some people do not talk much, but they convey many messages by simply being more silent, actually, right? So that is actually something related to communications. And then the other one is understanding of different cultures can also support us, can also help us to be a good interpreter. Sometimes we are thinking this way in Indonesia, because our cultures
Mhm.
teaches us how to think, how to behave as an Indonesian, right?
Yeah.
But when we meet, for example, someone from different countries, we don't have to talk about countries that are far away from Indonesia. So talking about Malaysia, for example, we are serumpun, right?
Yes.
We have the same origin actually, but we are in different countries. We are in different um what is it systems of government and different way of life, even though we are similars, but actually there are some differences. And when we communicate with the Malaysian, we have to make sure that we understand that language. So when they say something, for example, in English, with their background, with Malaysian background, so that we have to know that, okay, Malaysian think this way. So when we try to translate that or interpret that into Bahasa Indonesia, then we can find suitable Indonesians to be able to convey the message from that Malaysians. So, multicultural knowledge is also important to be an interpreters. And one more thing. So this is related to communication actually. Public speaking. Public speaking is really important when we want to be an interpreters, because one of the benefit of public speaking, as a speaker, for example, Ibu Meta is also a public speaker, right? Because you are dealing with students, so talking to many audiences. So we can what do we call that? So now when we have an idea, then we can share the ideas in a more systematical ways, in order to make our audience understand better, actually, right? So those are the things, in my opinions, that we can think of, that can support our job as an interpreter, I guess.
Right. Because we know that English has a lot of the varieties, right? Like British English, also American
Ah,
English, Singaporean English, Indian English,
yes.
so many English. But I think actually it's hard for me, especially or for the others, to get to know in depth in the different English language. Like they have different dialects, they have some different what the name words, right, or vocabularies, or and they will talk like using their own dialects. Like we speak in English, but we still use our Indonesian dialect, right, or Sundanese dialect, right, Japanese language, like that. So how can you handle it? Like when you got to different people from the other country with the different cultures and the dialects also. So what can you handle it to like to can understand them in that, like that?
Yeah, well, first thing first, we have to get used to how they speak actually, right? With the different dialects. If it is possible, for example, we know that our speaker will be from someone, the speaker is actually someone from Australia, for example.
Yeah.
then we can get used to how Australians say something. While individuals can also has their distinct uh, way of speaking, but at least in general, for example, when someone is from Australia, so they have similar accents. Then maybe we can look at the YouTube's video that shows Australians say something, or the news, for example. The news can be one of very powerful tools, for us to get used to certain accents. Oh, okay. So this is, how Australians say something in English. Then, if, for example, the speakers will be from different area, from Indian, for example, from India, yeah. Then we can simply learn the video that shows Indian people speaking English.
Okay.
With the standard English that we have,
Mhm.
actually, it is more than enough for us to be able to understand everyone saying in English. But because of different accent, sometimes usually it is quite hard, in our ears actually, right? So getting used to that, will be one of the ways that we can do. And then when the D-Day comes, when the day that we have to work as an interpreter comes, and we don't have any choice, but we have to present there. We have to be present there. Of course, we have to do as much as possible to catch everything that they say, try to process, try to translate that into the target language. But if you, for example, listening to the speakers and you miss, some point, when you do consecutive interpretations, you will still have the opportunity to make sure or to confirm, right? To
Yeah.
confirm
Mhm.
to the speakers. Okay, so are you trying to say this, for example? So is it, the point of, what you said
Ah,
just
okay.
now? Or let me just confirm before I convey the message to the audience, because I miss, this kind of point. Or simply, ask him or ask her to repeat. Sometimes, if the audience is kind enough and they know that, they are being translated, they said it again with exactly the same sentences, or they can also paraphrasing, to make it easier for me to understand. And by having that understanding, that we can be much more confident to convey the message to the local audience or to the Indonesian audience. There are many um, there's something can happen during our project actually, but as far as I know, as far as I concerned, based my experience, every challenges will always comes with the solution, so we don't have to worry about that. Mm.
I think we need more than an hour, yeah, to talk because that's an interesting conversation, by the way, to get to know you more as an interpreter. But the time is will be enough for
Okay.
3 hours. So um I want to I want to close this conversation. Um a name like I want you to say something to the students or the teachers in the sentence. Maybe can inspire them or it can yeah make them like know want to know more about English or as well for become an interpreter. That
Yeah. Okay, especially to the dear students actually, right? Who are now still in elementary school. Maybe our conversation tonight, is too heavy for you, but but I want to make sure that I am Indonesian. I am actually from Ciwidey, right? Okay, so back then, in my hometown, I spoke even now actually when I come back to my hometown, my house in Ciwidey, I still speak in Sundanese, 100% in Sundanese. But someone from a village like me can travel all over places actually that I couldn't imagine I could visit when I was a kid. As a kid from a village, it was a dream for me actually, to be able to visit Japan, for example, or to be able to visit even Singapore, for example, right?
yeah.
But then, I could go to those places. And most of the times when I had a chance to go there, I didn't have to pay with my own money. Because my client paid for me, or certain project paid for me. So my ticket is only the language. Okay, so if I could go to the dream countries, I believe that you watch movie, right? You are exposed to animations, you are exposed to the movie. Maybe in that movie you see that, oh, okay, so there is a country named United States, America, or there's a country named Britain, or UK, right? United Kingdoms, or there's a country named Malaysia or Australia. So could I go there someday? Yes, I assure you that you can go there someday. With a ticket. The only ticket that you can afford is actually English. And now you have a chance to learn the language. Ibu Meta is there with you in your class to teach you English. So from now on, I want you to be more serious when Ibu Meta comes, and learn as much as possible. You don't have to be perfect. Okay, so getting only one or two words from Ibu Meta classes will be really useful. That would be the things. So semangat terus untuk belajar bahasa Inggris.
Thank you
Thank
so much,
you.
Kangju, for such a wonderful and inspiring conversation. But we have to close this. So I think it can be inspired them, ya. Thank you, Kangju.
Insya Allah,
Wassalamualaikum
amin.
warahmatullahi
Oke, Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
wabarakatuh.
Siap.